Hello everybody, my name is Wilder, and today I'm going to be talking about Y2K, a postmodern RPG. Y2K is a game that was on my most anticipated games of 2019 list. You can check that video out if you would like, there's a card in the top right corner now. So Y2K was on my list. It was actually pretty high up on my list. So why was it that high? Well, I first heard about the game back in 2015 and was immediately interested in it. The voice cast drew me in, and I was excited to get to know the characters and find out what the story was all about. The game was released on January 17th, 2019, and I've sunk a lot of time into it since then. So just a quick note here before we start. Although I have played through this game, I'm only going to be showing footage from either the beginning of the game or some middle parts that don't really spoil anything because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who does want to play it. I've been waiting a long time for this game to come out, and now that it's finally here, what do I think? Well, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the look and the feel of this game. The game, I said it in my top 10 video, and I'll say it again, looks beautiful. I love it. The colors are nice, bright, and vibrant. It feels very 90s because of the colors they decide to use, and it looks nice in my opinion. I like the aesthetic of all the different areas. Speaking of the aesthetic, I love how the game uses colors to convey tone. When you're in an area that's supposed to be creepy, the dark blues and purples come in and help set the tone very well. When you're in the starting town, the grass and trees are bright pastel green and the houses are white, blue, and yellow in color. It makes the town feel friendly and welcoming. While the colors are nice, something that I don't like about how the game looks is the character movement. The game uses this sort of stop-motion movement, I'll call it, which simulates the feel of movement in old-school video games. While I understand the aesthetic this was supposed to bring, it actually ended up being a problem at points, and making me think I was dropping frames in certain areas. Although this was very noticeable in the beginning, I got used to it after a few hours, and it no longer bothers me. I thought I would mention it though because it is a design choice I thought I would enjoy, but ended up not liking. Now let's talk about characters, specifically the main character. His name is Alex. He just finished college and is home for the summer. His mom asks him to pick some stuff up from the store, and on his way there, he finds a cat who steals his shopping list. After chasing the cat into an abandoned building, you find a girl named Sammy Park. While the two of them start leaving the building, she gets taken by these weird entities and screams for Alex to help her. Afterwards, a video appears online of her being taken by these entities, and Alex takes it upon himself to solve the mystery of her disappearance. Throughout the game, Alex narrates his thoughts to the player. This can be a problem for some people because Alex's narration is quite different from what he's actually saying and how he carries himself in conversation, and he has a very I'm better than you personality in the beginning. As you go through the game, Alex starts to understand that he's making people upset because of his attitude and personality, but doesn't actually seem to fully understand that it's because he's being arrogant and rude, and decides to instead start to keep his true personality in his internal monologue for the player, instead of actually trying to change as a person. This is a little bit of a problem because a redemption arc should be more than understanding that you're upsetting people because of your attitude and more about what you're doing specifically and how you can change that about yourself. With this being said, this is a game about Alex's self-reflection and change. He never bothered me too terribly, but he can be a bit much at times. I don't necessarily think the way that the redemption arc for him was handled was the best, seeing as how his personality can still be a tad too much at times, but I get what was trying to happen here. The rest of the characters were pretty interesting, and I enjoyed a lot of the dialogue between all of them talking about what they want to do in their life and what they have interests in. Y2K did a good job at making most of the characters feel like young adults in the late 90s. Meeting the rest of your party is done quite well, and for some of them it feels very organic. Not all of them though, some feel almost shoehorned into your party. The characters I give a pass to, but what about the gameplay? Now be warned when you walk into Y2K, the game has a very slow start when it comes to gameplay. Lots of dialogue, little gameplay. Now I know this is an RPG, and this is classic for most RPGs, but it has a slower start than many. This doesn't mean that it's boring, of course. If you can get immersed in the abstract areas and the mysterious vibe for the first hour to hour and a half, which is honestly not that hard to do as I enjoyed the story quite a lot, then you're good. However, the slow start is made worse by something that I believe is only in the Switch version. Quick note here, I can't vouch for any other version when it comes to stuff like this, because I'm playing Y2K on the Switch, just keep that in mind. But I'm talking about the loading times. Now I haven't seen this mentioned by anyone outside of the Switch version, but this version of Y2K has some horrendous loading times. I'm talking like Sonic 06 loading times. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is something that didn't sit well with me when I started playing, and is still not sitting well with me. Whenever you enter a building, whenever you exit a building, whenever you exit or enter a town on the world map, and worst of all, whenever you get into a battle, the loading times on the Switch are ridiculous. It's so bad that sometimes it stops me from actually wanting to enter buildings. Sometimes it stops me from entering stores to stock up on items because I don't want to sit through insane loading screens. Sometimes they aren't that bad. If you go into a lot of buildings in a town, sometimes they start to get better, and sometimes it's just random, but it's the battles. Just going into battles becomes so much of a chore that it makes me not want to grind. If you've seen my review for Pokemon Let's Go, then you know that I love to grind in video games, but I can't in Y2K because I don't want to fight the loading screens. Remember, this is probably only in the Switch version, so be warned if you're getting it for the Switch. The developer did say on Twitter that they were going to look into it and see if anything could be done about it, and oh boy do I hope that they can do something because this is just too much. Anyway, loading screens aside, one thing that I wanted to add, which isn't too amazing at all, but after playing Pokemon for years and years, good on Y2K for having 5 save files. Come on Pokemon, what are you doing? At least 2, right? Or 3 for all different starters? Anyway, because I brought up the loading times of getting into fights, let's talk about the fights. When you're in a dungeon, the enemies appear much like in the Tales games. If you touch them in the dungeon, you'll get into a battle. Again, if you watch my Pokemon Let's Go video, then you'll know that I like this better than random encounters. However, when you're on the world map, the enemies don't appear and it is random encounters instead. Now I don't mind this because there is a healthy mix of both systems. It feels nice, I approve of this. And when you get into a battle, it's turn-based. It's all classic turn-based. I'm a huge fan of turn-based RPGs and I don't think I'll ever get tired of them. But in Y2K, it's a little different than just flipping through a menu to pick an attack. Everybody has a very unique weapon that they use, and a very unique attack style that involves player input much like the Paper Mario series. For example, Alex fights with vinyl records. When you choose his regular attack, it puts the record in a turntable and starts spinning. You have to press the button as the needle lines up with the strips on the record to rack up combos. Other characters have mechanics like this, and it makes the battles engaging and interesting. It makes sure you're always aware and thinking quick on your feet. There's also a really cool mechanic that goes along with the gameplay called Time Energy. Time Energy is a bar in the top right of your screen. As you take damage, it fills up. You can use it by holding down the left trigger. When you do, it slows down time in battle. You can use it to have an easier time dodging attacks or racking up combos on Alex's turntable. Time Energy is super useful for Alex's attack. However, using it for anything else seems to be kind of a waste. Most of the character attacks are simply too easy to use it, and some wouldn't even make sense to use it. Time Energy doesn't even really help when trying to dodge attacks. I had an easier time just memorizing the timing for dodging than trying to slow time and hit it just right. This is another mechanic that's a cool idea, but was executed poorly. However, this isn't the only problem with battles. Sometimes battles can be excruciatingly long, and there's not much you can do about it. The level and stat scaling of enemies feels way off, and it feels like no matter what enemy I'm fighting or what part of the game I'm fighting them in, they just have so much health. It's not even that they're one-shotting me or anything, it's just their health. They have so much of it. I can walk into a dungeon and spend 2 minutes or 10 minutes in one battle. This worries me because it's continued throughout the game as I played it, and it just doesn't stop. This is the type of difficulty scaling that I don't like to see in video games. It's basically taking enemies you've already fought, giving them extra health, and claiming that the difficulty is increasing as the game goes on because the battles are getting longer. It's not fun to go into a dungeon and just sit in a battle for the entire journey in there, especially with fights you can't avoid. Now this does get better if you stay on top of your equipment and make sure not to skip too many battles. But it seems like no matter what level I am, it doesn't make much of a difference because the damage values your characters deal out feel completely random and are hard to understand. Sometimes I can get a critical hit and do 18 damage, and then attack normally on the same enemy and do 20. This makes battles feel even longer and more frustrating because you become so aware of how much damage you're doing each turn. It doesn't help that enemies all basically have the same attack either. There are 3 ways of dodging attacks, which is good, but none of the enemies have different animations for their attacks, which makes each turn feel like the same thing over and over again. To not make battles feel so redundant, games add skills for each character to use. Y2K does this as well, but it's a bit of a mess. Every skill has a minigame attached to them, and some of the minigames can actually take a while and be quite punishing with no room for error. It even goes as far as having you fail the attack altogether for missing one input, even if you played the minigame correctly for 10 to 15 seconds. That's a lot of time to spend trying to use one skill that didn't even end up going off. Because of this, it really makes you stick to easy to use skills and your normal combos, which ends up being bad for the battle system because it feels like there's no variety. Something that doesn't help with this is how you learn the skills. You learn them through leveling up, but leveling in this game is a little different. Let me explain. The idea is that you call a number on a phone, and it lets you access what's called the Mind Dungeon. In here, you can talk to an NPC who will level up your party members if they have enough EXP. But Alex levels a bit differently. To level up Alex, you have to enter a different area with a bunch of floors. Every level you get access to a new floor, and each floor has 5 doors with numbers above them. You have to go to each door, choose what stat you want to increase, and how much it will increase by is based on the number above the door. But sometimes on certain floors, one of the doors won't allow you to increase a stat, and instead will give a skill to one of your party members. Pretty easy. However, the problem with this is that every 2 or 3 levels, a character will learn a skill, which means that you will have your party learning very few skills as the game goes on instead of having them learn skills as they level up. Having their skills be dependent on Alex's level isn't a very good idea, because I found myself hoping that behind every skill door there was going to be a skill that I wanted to actually use and that would work well, but more often than not it turned out to be a useless move that I wasn't going to touch. Or it would be for a character that I don't use and I would end up having to wait another 2 to 3 levels to hopefully learn a skill that I would want to use. More often than not, the skills turned out to be ones that I didn't want to use. Anyway, speaking of the mine dungeon, it's a very cool concept that is super interesting for the first 10 levels, and then unfortunately it gets old pretty fast. Going into the dungeon and picking stats for every door was a new and fresh idea that I welcomed, until I had been in there enough times to find out that it's actually really time consuming and not needed. The way you level up with your other party members is so quick and easy. I wish it were the same for Alex, but you got to pick his stat boosts from the same menu instead. Much like a lot that I've seen in Y2K, it's a cool concept that sadly had poor execution. I do have to praise the idea of picking the main character's stats, however, because of all the styles of play this grants. However, even this praise is ruined because no matter what build you have for Alex, the battles still feel slow and redundant. The last thing I'll say about leveling up is that when you do level someone up, they're fully healed. I love this mechanic in games so much, and I'm glad to see it here. Alright, stepping away from battles for a second, let's talk about something that this game does very well, and that is the music. This game's soundtrack is super good, and perfect for conveying the tone of the game. There are a lot of different battle themes, and they're all great for their own reasons. The one song that I've actually had stuck in my head since the game came out, however, is the main menu theme. I just can't get it out of my head. I really like it. It's simple and nice. So the music does a good job at conveying the tone of the game, but that is especially because the story is a mystery. The game has a slightly creepy tone throughout it because of this, and the music really helps with that as well. The story being a mystery is a big plus because it's an easy way to get the player pulled into the game. The story and some of the characters definitely carry this game. Even though it has problems, I'm still having fun with it, and I'm enjoying the story, and almost all the characters. These two things definitely try hard to carry the game overall though, which isn't the greatest because it shouldn't have to. The gameplay should make up for a game's shortcomings, but when the gameplay is one of the biggest problems, it makes it hard for the game to keep its head above water. Now this game took inspiration from many RPGs, one of them being Earthbound. If you've played Earthbound, then you know immediately how funny and quirky that game is. It's hard to find a boring NPC in that game, and Y2K follows in its footsteps with interesting interactions everywhere. Y2K has a lot of character everywhere you go, and there's personality in just about everybody. It feels like there was quite a bit of time put into a lot of the interactions you'll have. Now because there's a lot of little things that I think deserves the spotlight, but I don't want to linger on for too long, I'm just going to rapid fire them off here really quickly, alright? Okay, so here we go. You can examine the garbage cans, and in them are items, just like Earthbound. Look at these weird trees. One of them is a money tree, and the other is a burger tree. You can just grab stuff. If you look in the couch cushions, you can find change. Whenever you want to save, you have to do so through a phone booth. These item names are actual foods, which is really cool. I picked up Caesar salad once. If you want to fully heal your party, you don't have to go to an inn or a hotel. You have to go get a drink at the water fountain. The creepy vibe in this game is definitely on point. I really like it. Just about every loading screen has some funny tip about real life. Some NPC names and attacks are pretty funny, like this underpaid cashier whose attack is that she complained about her day. I went into a dungeon in a sewer and the enemies were samurai turtles. That's pretty funny. Y2K does a really good job at making you feel like this game is full of character, and a lot of the time it works. However, just like these little things that add to the game, there are also a lot of little bad things that take away. And like I just did, I'm going to list these here as well. You ready? Round 2. Why does the game have to go to a black screen when I climb up a ladder but not when I jump down? Why does the mine dungeon need 5 to 6 text boxes per door just to increase one stat? If you hold down one of the triggers, the battle speeds up. If you hold down Y on the Switch version, you run in towns and dungeons. Why was I not taught this, and why did I have to find out about both of them from Twitter? Why are there so many buildings for all your different items? There's a record shop for Alex's weapon, there's a camera shop for Michael's weapon, there are different restaurants for healing items. Why can't there just be one shop with 2 clerks or something? The loading screens on the Switch are too long for me to go into all these shops. The stop motion-like movement really makes me feel like I'm losing frames in certain areas. Alright, I think that about covers just about everything in this game. Y2K is a game that I had waited so long for, and now that it's here, what is my verdict? Well, if I had to describe Y2K in one word, it would be potential. The story is nice, most of the characters are good and interesting, the world is full of character, the colors and styles used for all the different areas are nice and cool, and honestly, I'm having quite a bit of fun with it. Having fun is obviously a huge plus in a game for me, but it doesn't mean that the game's problems can be ignored. The battle system needs an overhaul, the enemy scaling needs tuning, the skills need to have all their minagames taken away, The game needs to give the player more time to play and spend less time making the player do mundane tasks such as leveling up. I still stand by what I said, there is potential here, and I can definitely see it. Y2K has a lot of good ideas that were just executed poorly, and it's such a shame. So after all that, what do I rate this game? Well, here's the problem. I'm a little conflicted. There's so much potential here, and I'm having quite a bit of fun with it, but at the same time, I'm aware of all of its problems and how much they pull the game down. I wish this game was a 10 out of 10, like I had wanted it to be for so many years waiting for its release. I personally want to give the game a 7 out of 10 because of what's good about it, but I know that potential can't and shouldn't carry a game. It's something to learn from and build off of course, but I don't believe that it's something that should be on a list of good or bad about a game. However, because this is such a point that I'm trying to make here, I want to add something to my reviews. I want to give out awards for games whether they're good or bad. I can make up whatever award I want to go along with the score that the game deserves. That way, things that shouldn't affect the score can still be awarded without affecting the score. See what I'm getting at? So let's try this. Here it goes. I have decided to give Y2K a 6.5 out of 10 and award it with the title of Potential. There's definitely something here, and with a bit of work, I think it could be so much more. So I decided that awards would be a good way to praise or shame a game for something that doesn't necessarily affect the score, and I like it. I think it adds another layer to the overall review. Anyway, what did you think of the review? Did you play Y2K? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.